The protagonist of this story, Gilphas Eldragon, sought to reach the peak of martial arts, but he also realized that even a lifetime wouldn't be enough to achieve this goal. Because of this, he desperately clung to an ancient legend that was passed down through generations. Apparently, there was a golden fruit located within a sanctuary that was guarded by a dragon. This fruit was said to grant the power of immortality, so after a hard, long-fought battle against the divine dragon, Gilphas finally reached the ultimate prize, the immortality fruit. Evidently, he was truly surprised to see that the golden fruit actually existed. After killing the dragon, Gilphas took a moment to savor his victory before making a move to eat the fruit. Gilphas Eldragon, hailed as the strongest in the world, was confident that by eating the immortality fruit, he would be able to pursue his dream of reaching the peak of martial arts. However, several decades later, Gilphas, old as hell, was on his deathbed, surrounded by his family. Sitting beside him on his right was his eldest son, Gilliam. Gilphas noticed his son's sad expression and urged him to not look so pitiful. His time was simply up. Gilliam immediately put on a cheerful smile, and although it was forced, he couldn't help thinking of how lonely the manor would feel without his parents. Anyway, before passing away, Gilphas's mind briefly drifted to the immortality fruit, realizing just how stupid he was to have believed in that horseshit back then. However, he takes solace in the fact that he was blessed with a loving wife and children. He tells his children that he lived a good life and had no regrets. But deep down, this was obviously a freaking lie. Gilphas, in his final moment, was deeply regretful and a bit furious with the limited time he had, which eventually hindered his goal of reaching the peak of martial arts. So just like that, Gilphas Eldragon, the once hailed as the strongest in the world, closed his eyes and passed away with lingering regret despite all his achievements. But in a shocking and unexpected turn of events, the regretful old man opened his eyes again, totally confused and unable to speak. And as he wondered why everything looked so different, he also senses that his body was light, like way too light. This prompted him to look around, and that's when he noticed his baby hands. Realization immediately dawns on him that he was a freaking baby, in a baby's cot. Baby Gilphas couldn't believe his eyes, but he tried to calm himself since he was a 10-star warrior in his past life. In such a bizarre situation he found himself in, he starts wondering who could be responsible because this shit was nowhere near normal. That's when it clicks. The freaking golden fruit he ate long ago. Turns out it wasn't actually an immortality fruit, but rather a reincarnation one. This realization morphed his expression into a wide grin as he considers the incredible luck he now has. With this, he believes that he can finally reach the ultimate heights of martial arts. He notices that there are other babies around him, and since he was in the annex building, he quickly figured out that he must have been reborn into the Eldragon family. But he was genuinely puzzled why there are so many babies in the room. Just then, several maids enter the room with feeding bottles. They reach into one of the cots and grab a baby goblin to feed it. Baby Gilphas was puzzled to see a goblin in the room, and he wonders what the maids are planning to do. After feeding the little goblin with a red substance, the goblin explodes, spilling blood on baby Gilphas's face. Shell-shocked, fear crawls through his body as he tries to figure out what is inside the bottle. The maids then decide to dilute it a bit and continue giving it to the kids. Baby Gilphas was soon grabbed by a maid while he is still trying to figure out what it is that they fed the goblin that caused it to explode. He can clearly see that the content of the bottle wasn't milk, but it seems to be overflowing with immense power. He couldn't believe they were feeding babies with something so dangerous. The maid forces the bottle into his mouth when he tried resisting. And upon tasting the content, baby Gilphas finally realizes that it was ancient dragon's blood. He really couldn't comprehend how insane the maids were for forcing babies in drinking dragon's blood. He finally realizes what they meant when they mentioned diluting it. He decided to spit it out the moment he get the opportunity, and although he had already swallowed a little bit, he concludes that that little amount wouldn't kill him. He also noticed that the other babies were also spitting out the substance. Baby Gilphas decides to follow their lead before he explodes. But before he could, it dawns on him that he might be making a mistake by spitting it out. He realizes that if he absorbs all the magic power, he might end up surpassing his past self and finally reach the peak of martial arts. He doesn't have a clue what was going on, but he decided to use the situation to the best of his abilities. He gulps down everything in the bottle, showcasing why he should never be underestimated. After all, he was Gilphas freaking Eldragon. A while later, the maid was even shocked to see baby Gilphas's sudden attitude as he greedily consumed the dragon's blood, determined to absorb every last ancient dragon's power in the bottle. During the process, baby Gilphas was also stunned to realize that he was absorbing the dragon's power surprisingly easily, and since this works in his favor, he somehow managed to absorb everything without exploding. He was placed back in his cot after he was done drinking the entire bottle. Baby Gilphas noticed that the other babies had also survived the ordeal. In that moment, he was convinced that a baby's survival instinct couldn't be underestimated. And just like a regular baby, he starts feeling sleepy from enjoying a good meal. 7 years later, Gilphas was seen practicing his strength skills by placing a boulder on his feet while doing a one-handed push-up. He reaches 1,000 push-ups before hurling the stone away into the distance. He got up and stares at his bulked body, amazed at his wonderful physique. Gilphas Eldragon, now known as Zeke Eldragon, attributes all the strength he currently has to the quality of the dragon blood that he consumed as a baby. It was said that every being in this world possessed something called a source of power, but the ancient dragon blood that had been given to them as infants contained a tremendous amount of that power. Those who survived drinking it developed bodies far stronger than ordinary humans. With the divine dragon source of power within him, Zeke knew he had already surpassed the limits he reached at the same age in his past life. And since he was the only infant who had managed to drink an entire bottle of ancient dragon blood, his body underwent a drastic transformation, one even he did not expect. Yet, despite his progress, what frustrated him most was that he remained a mere 1 star. He had trained relentlessly, expecting to reach at least 4 stars by now. A star was the measure of one's source power. In this world, the human body was said to resemble a universe. The more stars one had floating within that inner universe, the stronger they became. However, as the number of stars increased, so too did the difficulty of reaching the next level. Zeke, in his past life, managed to reach the rank of 10 stars, which made him the only person in the world to ever do so. It has now been 7 years since Zeke was born as the son of the current head of the Eldragon family, but he was an illegitimate child. His mother had already died, and his father never once showed his face. Zeke cannot believe that he had a piece of shit as his father. And apparently, he reincarnated a millennium later where the world has become a place for the weak to die at the hands of the strong. There was also a strange ritual known as the Dragon's Trial. Only babies who survived drinking the dragon's blood were supposed to be trained as Eldragon warriors. But Zeke has not received a single training from anybody. Every time he tries asking the maid some questions, she simply answers that she wasn't at liberty to say anything. Zeke vents out to the poor maid, reminding her that those who pass the trial are supposed to get combat training. But he had been surrounded by only maids without a single instructor in sight. The maid straight up ignores Zeke's complaints and simply asks if there's anything he needs. Obviously, the answer was a no. Zeke can handle himself since he was currently focused on building his body more than getting combat training. He then asks the maid if she can give him information about the other children in the main family, but the maid gives him the same reply. She was not at liberty to say shit. Zeke tried a way around, hoping for a better reply, but the maid maintains her answer. Pissed off, he even wonders if this was the only thing the maid knows. Zeke then asked the maid if he was there to be mistreated, but the maid debunks this, saying they have been ordered to only tend to his personal needs. Zeke already knew the maid was a 3-star warrior, and for a simple combat training, she would suffice. However, since she was unwilling to help, he decides that it was time for him to head into the forest. He couldn't believe how unusual it was living with a maid for 3 years and have had only a minimal interaction with her. Zeke expects a reply, but he gets none from the maid, who seems to now be ignoring him. He made his way into the forest and eats a bunch of poisonous herbs, which obviously taste awful. However, he doesn't care as he considers it a part of his training. Suddenly, he notices that there is a faint trail following him. He wonders why someone would be trailing him and would not show up to say something. He ignores whoever it might be and focuses on the prey he found shortly after. He also noticed a strange black mist surrounding the angry boar in front of him. The black mist, which didn't exist 1,000 years ago, left him wondering what it was exactly. Nonetheless, he shows himself to the little angry pipsqueak, and just as its name implies, it charges towards Zeke. Zeke grins when he realizes that he has the boar's attention. He takes the perfect stance to easily dodge the boar, and once it was right in the open, he lands a punch to its gut. This leaves a terrifying impact that smashes the boar's insides and one-shots it. Zeke is impressed that just a light tap from him, who is a 1-star, was able to take the boar out. He then concludes that the quality of the star is what matters, not the quantity. He grabs the boar and puts it on his shoulders as he heads back home. Zeke talks about how he is already tired of staying alone and he thinks of going on an adventure. However, he realizes that the sea will be the only place he can go, even if he wants to go anywhere. Meanwhile, in the distance, a cloaked man watched from the shadows. He was shocked that Zeke was able to take out a boar with just a single punch without ever receiving an ounce of combat training. In addition to this, he can't believe that Zeke actually noticed that he was hiding. He basically concludes that Zeke is not a normal kid. Since his mother died very young and his father had no interest in him, he concludes that there is no way Zeke could have received a proper education. However, he isn't allowed to run away since he is the child of the family head. And because of this, he has been kept under surveillance. The strange guy realizes that things are getting very interesting at every turn. Zeke returns home and notices that there are visitors at the house. He can sense the strength of these visitors, and he wonders what it is that they want from him. He walks to the door to eavesdrop on their conversation, and from what he can sense, there is no killing intent from them. He then finally opens the door to see some men in the room, and he asks them why they have come. He notices that the men have the Eldragon emblem on their clothes. This gets him even more curious, and he wonders what the men want from him. Just then, the men tell him that they have come to take him because he needs to undergo an examination. Zeke almost loses his mind when he hears this, since no one told him about any freaking examination. Soon afterward, Zeke is taken to the main house. He could hardly believe that he had returned once again to the main estate of the Eldragon family. It turns out that he was brought to the main house not for luxury, but to attend the academy known as Dragon's Nest. After 1,000 years, the Eldragon family had established a school that served all branches of their bloodline. Everyone born with any relation or connection to the Eldragon family dreamed of entering this so-called Dragon's Nest to receive proper education once they turned 7 years old. And today marked the day of the entrance ceremony for that academy. Zeke was here to take part in the entrance exam. Even though he hadn't learned anything about the modern generation of his family, taking the exam was mandatory. Zeke immediately felt disheartened when he realized that this was the true reason they had brought him here. Why now, he thought, when he had already decided to leave and travel the world. While the other students walk past him, one of them with blue hair, Rangis, approaches him. Rangis is from the old scale village, and he asks Zeke if he is fine or if he is in some sort of trouble. Zeke turns around to look at him, and he rudely asks him what he wants. Rangis appears to be a timid person as he tells Zeke that he was only trying to help since he looks like he is troubled. Zeke is shocked by Rangis's approach. He can sense that he is the shy type, but he notices that he has some power running through him. Zeke gets on his feet and apologizes for being rude. He then introduces himself, and he tells Rangis that he is only confused as to what the family heads are planning to make them do. Rangis then replies that the exam content doesn't change from year to year. However, Zeke clears the air, telling Rangis that he actually does not know what the exam is all about. Rangis is shocked when he realizes that the guy in front of him truly has zero knowledge of what he is saying. Rangis wonders if Zeke will be fine since he has no idea what he was about to face during the examination. Rangis then decides to explain to Zeke. But just as he was about to, someone appears from behind, calling Rangis a lowly runt. Zeke was even shocked upon hearing this. This individual, Retin, had his group of bullies with him, and he was also from Old Scale Village. Retin makes fun of Rangis, asking him why a runt like him is coming for the examination when he can go home and just play around. Rangis still fails to catch on as he replies that he has come for the examination, but this only causes Retin to scream at him. Retin tells Rangis that he is a piece of trash and that there is no way someone like him will ever get into the academy. Retin continues having a laugh at Zeke as he reminds him that his father is a mock dragon. Zeke notices that Rangis is pissed as he can clearly see his clenched fist. Apparently, the Eldragon family followed an absolute hierarchy. The ranks were as follows: novice whelp dragons, regular soldier child dragons, captain level adult dragons, executive elder dragons, also known as elders, and at the very bottom were the pseudo dragons. Those who had failed to enter or graduate from the Dragon's Nest considered immature and incomplete dragons. Yet Rangis had long dreamed of proving that even if they were called pseudo-dragons, they were still dragons nonetheless. Zeke was surprised and asked why Retin was so sure Rangis would fail the exam even before it started. Retin, shocked by Zeke's interference, asks him who he is and if he has a problem with him. Zeke replies that he wasn't, but just wants to know why Retin thinks it is impossible for Rangis to enter the academy. Retin then replies that people like Rangis are weaklings. Zeke is shocked to hear this, and he simply tells Retin that Rangis is stronger than him and his gang of trash. This pisses Retin off as he asks Zeke if he is implying that they are beneath someone like Rangis. Before the entire thing can blow up, an examiner shows up to tell the students that the entrance examination is about to begin. He tells the applicants that they are required to pick a number tag after registering. Retin stares at Zeke with so much disgust, promising that he is going to remember his face. Zeke is surprised that Retin is already pissed, and he wonders why the current youth are short-tempered. Rangis is surprised to hear Zeke say this since they are all of the same age. Rangis then adds that anyone would get mad if they were called weak. Zeke then asks if the exam is mandatory, but Rangis mentions that he is free to withdraw if he thinks he lacks the ability to participate in it. This comes as a surprise to Zeke, But this further proves to Rangis that Zeke knows nothing. Rangis then advises Zeke to withdraw since he might get hurt during the examination. Zeke lets Rangis know that he has no intention of withdrawing. Rangis is surprised to see how confident Zeke is even though he has no idea what the exam is all about. Zeke then suggests that they get a move on before the exam begins. Momentarily, all of the applicants are gathered. The examiner stands in front to tell them the details of the exam. He lets them know that all they need to do is leave a scratch on the rock in front of them to pass the examination. However, no weapons aside from the ones provided by the examiners are allowed. To make it interesting, they are allowed to use their bare hands as long as they can make a scratch on the rock. The examiner then reveals that they all have 3 attempts each, but Zeke doesn't see this as a particularly difficult examination. Rangis was horrified to hear this as Zeke continued that the exams was just scratching on the rock. How anticlimactic. After surviving the dragon trial when they were still infants, he expected something far more terrifying and intense. But this seemed disappointingly simple. The examiner then orders the examination to begin. The first applicant walks up to the rock and slashes it with all his might. But this shatters his sword and leaves a loud bang that almost deafens those who are present. Even with all the strength that he put into it, he was unable to leave a scratch on the rock. The boy crashes to the ground in pain, and the examiners ask him if he is willing to use his remaining 2 attempts. But he is in so much pain that he can't. They declare this a forfeiture, and he is taken away. Zeke then notices that Rangis is acting all weird, and he wonders why this is since the exam appears to be easy. Zeke then asks Rangis about the rock. Rangis reveals that the rock is called the Regeneration Stone, and it can repair any minor scratch instantaneously. It also has the ability to reflect a damage impact by 100 times over if attacked with brute force. Zeke concludes that the rock is pretty outrageous. Rangis then mentions that one can actually leave a scratch on it if the ether power source within a person is properly circulated. With what he just heard, Zeke figures out that it basically falls on the proper handling of the ether power source rather than the individual's martial arts skill. Zeke takes a glance at the participants, and he figures out that there is a considerable number of applicants who should be able to pass the exam. He notices that Retin and his guys are also strong enough to pass the exam. From where he is sitting, he can hear the applicants failing one after the other after their arms are broken from trying to leave a scratch on the rock. In that moment, the examiner calls on number 315, which is Zeke's number. Rangis fears for Zeke, and he urges Zeke to withdraw, but Zeke assures him that he will be fine. Zeke steps up, and once the examiner sets his sight on him, he senses an immense pressure and aura coming from Zeke. Zeke is asked for a choice of weapon, and he replies that there is no need for one as he plans to use his bare hands. The examiner asks him again if he really doesn't want to use a weapon, and he replied with a yes, assuring the examiner that his fists are enough to do the job. When the other students hear this, they start making fun of him, saying there is no way he is going to be able to get a scratch on the rock with just his fists. Even Rangis doesn't believe in Zeke as he genuinely believes that his arms and fists might get ripped off. Rangis starts blaming himself, saying he should have tried to stop Zeke from participating in the exam. The examiner then gave the signal to begin. As Zeke approached the massive stone, he placed his hand on it, noting that this was the first time he had ever seen such a material. He thought to himself that it must have been formed over 1,000 years ago. And even now, there were still many things about the current generation that he didn't fully understand, but that didn't matter anymore. He immediately gathered his source power into his fist. While Rangis trembled with anxiety about what might happen to his friend, Zeke was actually filled with excitement, because for the first time he could use his full strength. He decided to use the mysterious stone to measure his current power. Rangis's eyes widened once more as Zeke unleashed the first form of the Dragon Destruction combat technique, Burst Strike against the stone. A tremendous surge of energy erupted from the impact. Fragments of the shattered rock flew everywhere, and the violent wind from the blast sent dust and debris swirling through the air. In awe yet on guard, Rangis quickly shielded himself from the aftermath, while the examiner's eyes widened in disbelief at what he had just witnessed. As the dust began to settle, Zeke stood there with a smile on his face, remarking that the technique he used still seemed too much for his current strength. Despite the severe injuries to his hand, he laughed at himself, realizing he still needed much more intense training. The other participants were speechless at what they had seen. Retin looked both shocked and annoyed that Zeke had destroyed the enchanted stone. A blonde girl comments on how interesting Zeke was, where Rangis was left picking his jaw from the floor. While the others still couldn't get over what had happened, Zeke waited happily for the stunned examiner to announce the results. The examiner even considers what he just watched an impossibility because only someone who was higher should have been able to shatter the regeneration stone. Since Zeke is an illegitimate child, The examiner wonders if he somehow inherited the power of the head's bloodline. The examiner also figures out that he has seen the move that Zeke used somewhere else. Zeke then walks up to the examiner and asks him how he fared in the examination. The examiner lets him know that he has passed, and he is given a bottle with a green substance in it. Zeke asks the junior examiner about the contents of the bottle, but the guy just stares at him with a forced smile, telling him to just hurry and move along. Zeke just assumes that the bottle is a reward for passing the test. Zeke returns to his newly found friend, and Rangis praises him for how amazing he was. Zeke then asks Rangis about the bottle, and he reveals that it is a healing potion. Zeke is confused when he hears this, and Rangis mentions that it is a normal grade healing potion. Zeke checks it out one more time and realizes that the substance doesn't look poisonous. He starts wondering if the said healing potion might actually be a spiritual medicine. Apparently, the elixir, known as cloud-piercing clarity wood, was made from extremely rare materials, herbs found only in secret realms, along with the pure source power of divine beasts and the essence of elusive phantom beasts. When used, it could heal not only fresh wounds but also old scars and injuries. On top of that, it could enhance one's source power. Because the ingredients were so rare and the process so complex, such elixirs were rarely seen. Zeke then consumes the healing potion, and just as expected, his torn arms heal back up. Zeke was blown away and realizes that the healing potion is really an elixir. Rangis then says he has no idea what an elixir is, but the Eldragon healing potions are much better than the ones obtained from stores. Rangis considers this a normal thing, while Zeke is entirely blown away, since all of his injuries healed instantly. However, he notices that there is no ether surge like when he takes an elixir. Rangis then tells Zeke that he is quite impressive, but Zeke doesn't believe this. Zeke checks out the bottle and realizes that it is basically what human knowledge has been able to create for over a millennium. Rangis then reminds Zeke that he is pretty strong, and Zeke replies that he aims to be the strongest, so he is not surprised. Retin and his gang of bullies soon step forward to take their test, and they all pass. Zeke is not surprised by this, as he already knows that they are going to pass. Finally, applicant 414 is called, and this turns out to be Rangis. As he walks down the stairs, Zeke notices that Rangis is nervous, and he urges him to pull himself together, assuring him that he is going to be fine. Embarrassed, Rangis asked him to lower his voice. When Rangis chose a sword as his weapon, Zeke watched closely, wondering what he was doing. Once the examiner gave the signal, Rangis attacked the stone, but as he expected, he failed on his first try. Determined, he stood again for another attempt, but his strike bounced off the stone, causing him to lose his balance and fall. His hands trembled from the stone's reflective ability. Retin and his group burst into laughter, saying it was just as they expected. The son of a pseudo-dragon was nothing more than a pseudo-dragon himself. They mocked him, telling him to give up. Retin even sneered at Zeke, asking if this was the same man he claimed could pass, and if Rangis was truly stronger than them. Zeke stayed silent for a moment, then told them to stop spouting nonsense. The examiner informed Rangis that he only had one attempt left, and asked if he still wanted to continue. Rangis couldn't answer. Overwhelmed by embarrassment and the ridicule of others, he lowered his head, but then Zeke walked up to him and asked what he was doing. He questioned why Rangis was using a sword instead of a spear, why he would choose a weapon that didn't suit him, and why he would take a test without any plan at all. Retin watched mockingly as Zeke told Rangis that in his current condition, he wouldn't even scratch the stone no matter how many times he tried. Retin and his group laughed again, calling Zeke an idiot, reminding him that Rangis knew nothing about using a spear. His weak father only ever taught him swordsmanship, they said, and switching weapons now wouldn't change the outcome. But Zeke ignored their jeers and called out to the examiner, asking if it was against the rules to change weapons. The examiner said it wasn't. Then Rangis is lucky, Zeke said with a grin. He turned to Rangis and asked if he trusted him. Memories of all the humiliation he and his father had suffered flashed through Rangis' mind. Gritting his teeth, he stood tall and said he would trust Zeke. He would fight with a spear just as Zeke told him to. Rangis explains that his father never managed to enter the dragon's nest. Because of that, people called him a pseudo-dragon and laughed at him. But despite all the humiliation, his father endured everything just to raise Rangis properly. That's why Rangis swore to prove to everyone that he, Rangis, the son raised with care by his father, is also a true dragon. He stood up once more, gripping the spear tightly in his hands, and declared that today, he would prove that neither he nor his father were fake dragons. He also realized that if he tried again with a sword, the result would only be the same as before. So this time he decided to trust Zeke completely. The only problem was that he didn't know how to use a spear. Zeke called out to him, and as he pointed toward the enchanted stone, He told Rangis that there was nothing else he needed to do. Just thrust the spear straight into the stone without thinking about anything else. Just pierce it straight through, Zeke said firmly. Rangis tightened his grip on the spear. He knew that under normal circumstances, stabbing the stone directly wouldn't cause even the slightest damage, especially since it had a strong regeneration element. But Zeke was the first person to ever stand up for him, even though they had just met that very day. It was something new and unfamiliar to him. But because of that, he chose to place his full trust in Zeke and believe in his own strength this time. He gathered his source power into the spear and immediately noticed something strange. For years, he had wielded a sword, yet he had never managed to wrap it in this much source energy, something he was now effortlessly doing with the spear. With a determined shout, Rangis unleashed his full power and struck the stone with everything he had. Retin nearly died laughing, saying exactly what he had predicted. The changing weapons wouldn't help him pass the test, but Rangis didn't stop. He felt something different, something powerful. The spear in his hands felt like an extension of his own body. Then, as he drove the weapon forward with all his strength, the spear pierced through the enchanted stone completely. The shock on Retin's face and those of his companions was priceless. Even the examiners couldn't hide their astonishment, delighted by what they had just witnessed. Rangis hadn't just scratched the stone, he had pierced straight through it. Zeke immediately praised him, while Rangis himself could hardly believe what he'd done. Even after the examiner officially declared that he had passed, Rangis still asked in disbelief if he had really succeeded. Zeke smiled, wrapped an arm around his shoulder and confirmed it. Overwhelmed with joy, Rangis nearly cried as he hugged Zeke tightly, shouting over and over that he had done it, that he had passed the test. Retin's group, however, refused to believe it. They called it luck, but Retin himself stayed silent, shaking with rage. He couldn't accept that, just as Zeke had said. Rangis was actually stronger than them, and that his result was far better. The examiner then announced that the test had officially ended. Afterward, he declared that the entrance ceremony would begin shortly. Zeke immediately asked if the test was truly over. Rangis replied that it seemed so, but added that there would probably be more tests once they entered the dragon's nest. Just then, a group of men appear in the distance, walking toward the students. Among them was a gloomy-looking man who instantly catches Zeke's attention, and he asked Rangis who he was. Rangis cannot believe that Zeke just trash-talked the family head. Zeke doesn't hold back as he calls the family head an ugly guy, but before he can say anything further, Rangis immediately covered his mouth, whispering that it would be best if he stayed quiet, repeating his plea for him to stop talking. Zeke nodded. When he looked again at the group, he remarked that these people represented the current power of the Eldragon family. Some of them were at the 7-star level, while others were 6 stars. Their strength was quite impressive, especially the current family head, Gilphas Eldragon, who was an 8-star level powerhouse. 1,000 years ago, only a handful of people had ever reached that level. Still, Zeke wasn't sure how many existed in this current era. "I don't like this family head," Zeke muttered. But before he could say more, Rangis tried to hush him again. Zeke sighed and thought to himself that he never expected this man to be his father in this lifetime. A dark, fiery aura radiated from Gilphas' body, making the entire area feel heavy. The examiner quickly ordered everyone to stay silent because Master Gilphas was about to speak. When Gilphas stepped forward, he uttered only a few words. They must all strive to become the flesh and blood of the Eldragon family. As he spoke, the terrifying pressure of his aura spread across the hall. Zeke wasn't affected, but many of the rest trembled in fear, some struggling to breathe as their bodies froze under the immense pressure. Zeke noticed that even Rangis was affected. He couldn't believe how easily everyone around him was overwhelmed by the family head's presence. More than that, Zeke could sense an intense hatred hidden within Gilphas' aura. He didn't know the reason behind it, but even so, he couldn't bring himself to like the man who was supposedly his father. After he is done addressing the student, Gilphas turns around to leave. Another elder then takes the reins, telling the students that the head of the house is expecting great things from them. This person catches Zeke's attention too, and he starts to wonder who the blonde-haired elder is. Zeke figures out that Gilphas' departure has reduced the tension on the students a bit, but they all remain composed from the aftermath of Gilphas' presence. The examiner then steps forward to reveal that they are going to announce the dormitory assignments. Zeke is shocked to hear this, as he thought they would all be going to the same place. Rangis then decides to explain to him since he knows nothing. He tells him that the academy has 4 dorms. The students are assigned to one of the 4 dorms, which are the East, West, North, and South dorms. Momentarily, Zeke hears his name and he stands up to leave. He tells his new friend to take care of himself and the two exchange pleasantries before he leaves. Zeke has been assigned to the Academy's East Dorm, and he is surprised to see how much things have changed in over 1,000 years. He follows the directions written in the note in his hand to navigate his way to his room. He is worried that his roommate will be mad that he is coming in late, and this all happened because he got lost. He finally makes it to the door, and with all enthusiasm he opens the door to announce his arrival and greet his new roommate. However, the enthusiasm and excitement die off when he sees who his roommate is. Zeke cannot believe that his roommate is none other than Rangis, and when he sees the boy, he just assumes that he has an unexplainable connection with him. Rangis smiles while agreeing with him, and also mentioning the fact that he was already feeling lonely. Zeke then asks Rangis if there is no plan for the day, and he says there is none. Since their training session will start the next day, they have been instructed to rest. Zeke has no idea of this since he was not paying attention during the entire orientation session. He looks bright while admitting this, but Rangis doesn't think it's something that he should be proud of. Rangis decides to move past the entire scolding session, and suggests that they get some sleep since they will be training the next day. Apparently, Zeke was initially planning to ditch the school and just go on an adventure, but the new things that he saw since he arrived at the school interested him. He has decided to stick with the house just a little bit, if this will help him to learn more about the world after a millennium. A month later, the kids are undergoing intensive training under their tutor. They are being taught how to master the dragon's breath, which was made by the 15th head of House Eldragon. The tutor tells them that they need to master the technique so that they can use it in any situation. The tutor moves around, keeping an eye on the kids. He notices that some of them have mastered it, and one of them is Leica, the head of the house's daughter. Apparently, she is already skilled enough to be classified as a second star. However, he is more interested in Zeke. While everyone else is struggling, Zeke is carrying a boulder on his head while holding two dumbbells that have small boulders on them too. The tutor starts to draw closer to the fact that Zeke inherited the head's power. However, he wonders how he is able to master everything since he had no teacher who could have put him through. The teacher can only wonder, but couldn't come to a conclusion. Zeke, on the other hand, couldn't believe that the technique he once called the Dragon King's breathing technique had been further developed by the succeeding family heads, and that it was now being taught to other branches of the family as well. According to Zeke, breathing techniques were methods that gathered the source power from the surroundings into the body. Once circulated, this source power would strengthen a person's own inner energy. The effectiveness of such techniques depended on an individual's ability and intellect. That was why the great families of this world kept their techniques secret, never allowing them to be learned by outsiders or those not belonging to their bloodline. Zeke also realized that the dragon's breath was a safe and simple technique, easy enough to master, but it was useless to him if it could only be used while resting. His own version of the breathing technique allowed him to manipulate the surrounding source power even while moving. Because of that, it was far more complex and powerful in actual combat, but also much harder to learn. Only a few had ever mastered it. He thought the current generation must have simplified his original version, so that even the family's branch members could learn it, and that decision had clearly helped strengthen the Eldragon family. Zeke couldn't help but feel a strange satisfaction. He never imagined that the techniques he had discovered long ago would still have an impact after 1,000 years. Zeke is impressed by this, and he believes that there might have been other martial arts techniques that have changed over time too. Leica meanwhile quietly observed Zeke from a distance. After the training session, the kids head to the dining hall to eat. While everyone is struggling to eat due to tiredness, Zeke is munching on his food without a care in the world. He notices that Rangis is looking drained, and he urges him to eat his food because he won't be able to move optimally if he runs out of energy. Rangis is forced to ask Zeke how he is so full of energy when everyone else is drained. Zeke simply replies that Rangis is just a weakling. He urges him to eat more and train harder. While lecturing Rangis, Zeke notices that some of the kids who are well-trained are actually eating their food. Just then, Zeke is approached by Leica, and because Zeke doesn't know her, he straight up asks her who she is. Rangis almost chokes on his food when he hears this, and he quickly moves to Zeke to whisper in his ear. He tells him that Leica is the head's daughter, but Zeke innocently tells Rangis that he had no idea. Rangis is almost dying from pressure as he tells Zeke that they are not even supposed to be talking to Leica. Zeke just stares at him like an idiot, while telling him that he is also the head's son, even though he is an illegitimate child. Rangis and Leica are both shocked when they hear this, and Leica asks him if he is telling the truth. Zeke calmly replies that he has no reason to lie. Leica then asks him how he was able to get strong enough to smash a regeneration stone with his bare hands. Leica is genuinely interested, but Zeke just replies that he was able to do it because he is just a cool guy. Zeke notices that Rangis is totally out of his zone, and he calls him back out of it, telling him to eat his food. Leica then moves closer to Zeke, asking him if he would like to join her. Zeke is confused by what she means, and Leica says it plainly, urging Zeke to become her subordinate. Leica tells Zeke that she is going to become his backer since he is an illegitimate child, and he would obviously want allies. Leica wants Zeke to assist her in becoming the next head using his power, and she promises to reward him generously when she becomes head of the family. She sweet-talks this, but Zeke calmly tells her that he is not interested in the offer. When Leica hears this, she assumes that Zeke is also aiming to become the head of the family, which is why he is rejecting the proposal. While she is busy spewing her trash, Zeke is observing her, and he sees that she is already on the verge of becoming 2 stars, and he considers it something impressive for her age. Zeke finally opens his mouth to tell the girl that she is free to do whatever she likes because he is not interested in anything that concerns the family. Leica is shocked to hear this, and she gets more persistent as she asks Zeke what he really wants. Zeke is pissed off, and he angrily stabs the table with his table knife while unleashing a scary amount of pressure from his body to tell Leica that he has no interest in serving anyone. Zeke says he wants to be alone because he is obviously the strongest. Leica can feel the pressure from Zeke, leaving her utterly shocked. She cannot believe that Zeke's aura is actually scaring her. Zeke continues munching on his food while Rangis tries to calm the situation. Leica then loses it, and she challenges Zeke to a duel. Zeke is surprised by this, but he is not one to shy away from a challenge. In no time, the news about the duel spread among the students that Leica is having a duel at the training grounds. The students rush over to watch the duel, and while Rangis is freaking out, Zeke is acting very casual. Rangis tries to remind Zeke that he is about to fight Leica, but Zeke simply replies that he has no idea who she is. Zeke then notices that Rangis is also acting formally, and he asks him why this is. Well, that's because his friend was the head's son. Rangis practically screams in frustration. Zeke then asks Rangis what it is that he wants from him. Rangis tries to explain the situation to him. He points out that Leica Typhina Eldragon was Balz's daughter with Typhona bloodline, which was basically one of the 4 great houses backing Eldragon. He continued, saying Leica is a prodigy because she was able to master every form of swordsmanship that comes from House Typhina. Zeke just stands there casually while telling Rangis that the only thing he is aware of is the fact that she is Balz's daughter. Zeke starts laughing, replying that not knowing actually makes it more exciting. He considers this an exciting turn of events while Rangis scolds him, pointing out that there was no way he was going to win against Leica. Rangis then asks why Zeke accepted the challenge in the first place. Zeke says it is obvious for him to accept if he is challenged to a duel. In addition to this, he points out that Leica was already there, and from the looks of it, she was also ready for the duel. Leica places her sword in the ground and screams at Zeke to stop chattering. She asks if Zeke was ready to be taught some manners. With both parties ready for the duel, Rangis had no choice but to leave the arena. Rangis urges Zeke to be careful as he runs away. Now that they are alone, Zeke asks Leica why she is so hellbent on fighting him. Leica replies that she is aiming to be the next head of the house and to claim the said seat. She wants to defeat Zeke and make him serve her. Zeke is shocked when he hears this and he starts wondering what it is everything has to do with him. Leica is surprised that Zeke is acting all nonchalant and she asks him if he doesn't know the truth about his family because he is an illegitimate child. Zeke is about to tell Leica that he knows when she cuts him off. Leica explains that, including Zeke, there are 5 heirs competing to be the next head. Zeke is the only one who wasn't aligned with any of the 4 great houses of Eldragon. But the key point was that these 5 houses were responsible for producing the next head of the family, which means they are all striving to be the best in the academy. And to stand against her brothers, Leica says she needs more allies. The whole explanation leaves Zeke totally confused, but he manages to grasp the point of it. Leica lets him know that she is fighting to secure her place. So without wasting any more time, she lunges towards Zeke, determined to defeat him. So with her sword, she tries to land a hit on him, but he subtly steps back. Zeke dodges the strike as it shattered the ground. Leica got up and launched another strike, swinging her sword frantically with great power. This left the spectators totally amazed. They commend Leica for being amazing with the effortless way she uses the huge training sword. Leica increases the intensity in her attacks, but Zeke simply leaps around the arena, dodging her every strike with ease. Back to the spectators, they were blown away by how powerful Leica was since she is the child of the family head. They are confident that she will finish the match in time. Unbeknownst to them, Leica is already getting frustrated because all her opponent does is moves around to dodge her strikes. Zeke puts little to no effort into dodging Leica's attacks, forcing her to question her inability to land a hit. Zeke commends Leica for actually being fast, and the kind of technique she is using also appears to be great. He even adds that she is performing better than regular 1-star warrior. Leica gets mad and screams, telling Zeke to fight instead of just talking. Since Leica is asking for it, Zeke decides to give her a taste of his strength. Zeke easily dodges her strike before punching her in the tummy. The punch sends a destructive wave through her body, causing her to cough up blood. Leica falls to her knees in pain, leaving the other students shocked. Leica grits her teeth and looks up at Zeke, questioning why she can't land a hit on him when she is supposed to be much better than him. Zeke admits that she is faster than most 1-stars that he has met, but he lets her know that she is still nothing but a 1-star warrior. Leica then argues, reminding Zeke that he is also 1-star. He explains that he can easily read her movements thanks to the way she breathes, the twitch of her muscles, and even the shift of her eyes. In addition to this, he has way more experience than her. Zeke explains this in such an arrogant way that it forces Leica to get back on her feet. She dashes toward him again with her sword in hand, ready to tear his head off. But even with the surprise attack, Zeke still dodges with ease. This leaves Leica clearly open to Zeke's attack, and he punishes her by punching her straight into the far wall. She hits the wall and leaves a huge cloud of dust covering the area. The spectators are left shocked when they see this, wondering if Leica actually lost. Rangis is excited as he rushes back into the arena, telling Zeke how incredible he is. However, Zeke tells Rangis that the fight is not yet over. He is impressed that Leica is actually able to withstand his punch. When the dust clears, Leica is seen struggling to get off her knees with a battered body, not ready to give up just yet. As Rangis tries telling her to stop because she might end up worse, Zeke also tells him to step back because things are about to get more serious, and if he gets injured, he is not going to be responsible for it. Zeke had suspected it, and now he confirms that Leica has reached 2 stars. Leica gets on her feet, and a blaring aura swirls around her. The spectators immediately figure out that Leica has reached 2 stars. The 2-star level was a stage where one could channel source power into their martial arts, even manifesting it outside their body as aura. Leica appears stronger, and she thanks Zeke for pushing her to be able to reach 2 stars. Enraged, she dashes toward Zeke, ready to strike him down. Her sword follows a golden trail of aura, and Zeke admits that she has gotten stronger and faster. Zeke continues to play with her until he misjudges her strength, and he ends up getting cut on the cheek. Leica notices that he is left in shock, and she uses that to boast about the strength of a 2-star. She assures Zeke that he is about to face the true Thunder Spirit Greatsword arts. Zeke, on the other hand, is excited because he will finally get to witness something he hasn't seen in the past. He is absolutely hyped to see what Leica has in store for him. Leica then activates her Thunderlight Flash technique that hits Zeke before he could even move, leaving him totally amazed and with questions of how Leica is able to wield lightning. Zeke admits that Leica's lightning is way too absurd, but Leica doesn't see any form of regret coming from him because Zeke seems to be having a blast. Leica angrily activates another technique, striking Zeke, leaving him to come to the conclusion that whatever Leica is doing is just tough for him. He knows that his body can't take what Leica is doing to him just yet. And while he is still trying to gather information on his current status, the spectators are all amazed. They never expected someone who is a 1-star warrior to stand toe-to-toe with Leica. Zeke figures out that Leica's movements haven't changed much, but her upgrade to 2 stars has given her a sudden explosive power. Zeke is forced to admit that Leica is doing pretty great, in addition to the fact that being covered in lightning the way she is doing it was basically impossible 1,000 years ago. With the way she is moving around, Zeke figures out that he could land a counterattack, but he is curious to see her full power, so he is ready to take the hits till then. Leica is pissed that Zeke still has the effrontery to be smiling even when he is in such a bad situation. She concludes that Zeke is brimming with confidence and decides to take that confidence away from him. She dashes toward him with an even deadlier and faster technique that Zeke couldn't dodge. Zeke watches as the attack hits him, and he is thrown into the wall, leaving a loud explosion that gets everyone watching worried about his well-being. The dust clears off, and Zeke is still on his feet with a smile on his face. This pisses her off again, and she strikes him with another lightning bolt attack to get him on his knees. Rangis comes running over, telling Leica to stop the attack, but Leica refuses, replying that Zeke is on his feet. Leica claims that she can't stop because that would only crush his pride. Leica promises to go easy on Zeke if he surrenders and swears loyalty to her. However, Zeke remains silent, and Leica can clearly see that even though he is not a legitimate child, his pride as an Eldragon remains in him. Anyway, since he is acting all prideful and domineering, Leica decides that she is going to use everything she has to finish off the fight. She activates the Thunder Spirit Greatsword Arts, the Heavenly Thunder, and she strikes him with it. Zeke cannot move from where he was, and he was dealt with the entire force of the strike. His body is hit with so much lightning that he screams out in pain. Seeing this, a panicked Rangis screams out to his friend, However, once the attack is over, Zeke crashes to the shattered ground, unresponsive. Leica finally pushes her sword into the ground, believing that the match is over. To her greatest surprise, she hears Zeke's voice behind her, saying he finally understands how things work. Leica turns back, and to add to the surprise, Zeke's body is now sparkling, pointing out the fact that he can now use electricity. This shocks her and also leaves her asking why Zeke can use electricity. Zeke is also shocked because he didn't know that this is what they call electricity. He walks toward Leica with pride, telling her that he actually has no idea how he is able to do it. However, he was intentionally leaving himself to get hit so he could study Leica's power, and before he knew it, he could use it already. Even with his explanation, Leica is still ultimately confused because what Zeke says should be impossible. All Zeke knows is that as Leica was hitting him with her attacks, he was constantly using his Dragon King's breath, and the lightning energy ended up reacting to it. This eventually built up lightning inside him, and in no time he found himself controlling lightning. Zeke tells Leica that he might not know all the details, but he figures out that she has a rare body since the greatsword art is a family technique. Zeke decides to assume that her entire clan has the same constitution as her, and he has also learned a great lesson that power source itself can be fused with lightning. Zeke then adds that it is all thanks to Leica that he has managed to become 2 stars. With this, he confidently tells her that the fight isn't over yet. Leica angrily swings her sword at him, but Zeke only smiles and activates his lightning power. Zeke then runs so fast that he couldn't control his body. Since his power source has been infused with lightning's properties, his entire muscles and nerves are stimulated, boosting his stats. Zeke considers it a special trait and concludes that he is going to get the hang of it in no time. Meanwhile, Rangis can only watch from the sides as the two battle each other, and he is barely keeping up. Rangis soon realizes that Zeke is already dodging Leica's strikes pretty effortlessly. Leica is frustrated about the whole thing, leaving her to ask Zeke if he is trying to mock her, but he simply smiles and replies that he wasn't. He tells her that he actually sees her as a real threat. Leica swings her sword to a great distance just to try and catch him off guard, but he still dodges the strike, deciding that it is time he finishes off the battle. Zeke mentions that to finish the battle, he is going to create a new technique, even though it's been a long time since he's done that. Leica is confused when Zeke says this, and Zeke lets her know that it is just as she heard. He is going to create a new technique or a special form, to put it simply. This shocks Leica, leaving her to question if Zeke was trained in secret combat arts, but she can't fathom which house it is. Zeke notices that she is completely lost in her thoughts, and he uses the opportunity to charge toward her at great speed. Zeke hits her with his newest technique, the dragon-slaying arts, Tempest of Thunder. With a powerful combination of lightning bolts, Leica falls to her knees. Smiling, Zeke declares that the match was over. Leica was severely injured and couldn't even stay on her knees. She ends up crashing to the ground in pain. This left all the spectators stunned. Leica crawls toward her sword, unwilling to accept she had just lost. She was aiming to surpass her brothers to become the next head of the house. While she is busy scolding herself, Zeke walks up to her, telling her that she was actually strong because she provided him with a really tough fight. Zeke mentions that he likes learning new things, and he doesn't consider the battle a waste of time. With a smile on his face, he asks Leica if they will get another chance to duel again. In fact, he wants them to still engage in another duel in the future. As he says this, a stunned Leica just stares speechlessly before agreeing with a smile. A few hours later, Leica's father, Balza, was seen in a dungeon, wiping out monsters as if they were nothing. Just the first form of his dragon combat arts was enough to take out a whole horde of monsters without stress. He was in the middle of dispatching the rest of the horde when an officer enters the dungeon to tell him about the latest report concerning his daughter. He lets Balza know that his daughter, Leica, has advanced to 2 stars, but Balza is not moved by this. The guy tries telling Balza that Leica's advancement is a really huge feat for her age because, as things stand, she might reach 5-star before she graduates. Balza then clears the air, saying talent is nothing unless it is put to use. He urges the guy to come back with more news when she has finally used her new power. Just then, the guy tells Balza that Leica just lost a fight, and Balza assumes that she fought a senior. However, the officer tells him that the person who defeated Leica was his illegitimate son, Zeke. Balza remembers Zeke because of the woman who birthed him. Balza admits that Zeke's mother actually had talent, but he also knows that his mother was long dead before he was born. This leaves him wondering how he was able to acquire the skills that he used in defeating a 2-star. The officer then mentions that Zeke also got to 2 stars on his own. He didn't have anyone mentoring him, but he kept pushing forward. Upon hearing this, Balza decides that it is time they begin the first trial. The guy is shocked to hear this, and he tries to remind his master that it is too early, but Balza doesn't care. He says death comes to all equally, and only the strong are allowed to survive. Anyone who is not able to survive the first trial is absolute trash and deserves no future. The officer has no choice but to follow his boss's order. Balza adds more shocking orders to what he is passing out by telling the officer to summon Freya. He is forced to ask again, and Balza confirms this, saying he wants Freya to be the one to oversee the trial, since Zeke happens to be an interesting kid. The officer acknowledges the order and walks away, but as he does, Balza finally shows his excitement to see what Zeke has in store for him. Later on, Zeke and the other students are in the training ground, following the teacher's instructions. However, Zeke's training was a bit extreme, carrying boulders 5 times his size. He is busy working on his breathing technique while the other kids are practicing the dragon's breath. The breathing technique he is learning is considered simple to him, and he expects kids to be able to even learn it. Rangis soon notices Zeke's difference in training regimen, and he asks him if he is not interested in training with them. Zeke says he doesn't understand where he is coming from, and Rangis mentions the dragon combat arts training. Zeke then calmly replies that he has already learned it, shocking Rangis. Rangis argues with him because they just taught them moments ago and there is no way he has already mastered it. Zeke then decides to give him some lessons about his ether flow and how imbalanced it is. He drops the heavy boulder that he is carrying on his head and tells Rangis to turn around. Rangis turns, and Zeke hits him from behind, passing some really good ether energy into him. He tells Rangis that what he is feeling is the proper channeling route. Rangis can immediately feel the difference, and he thanks Zeke for his help. This is when it finally dawns on Rangis that his friend actually mastered it. But Zeke is pissed that Rangis even doubted him. Rangis quickly clears the air, telling his friend that he misunderstands him. Rangis mentions that he has never been taught by anyone besides his father, which is why he has always had to push himself. However, Zeke is already strong enough to defeat Leica on his own. Rangis assumes that the dragon combat arts are simple and boring for his friend, but Zeke says this is not the case. He mentions that the stability is actually quite impressive. Basically, dragon combat arts was once talked down on by his sons, who claimed that it was too complex and difficult. The dragon destruction combat arts was indeed a complex and demanding technique, but it possessed immense power, consisted of 4 main forms, and during his battle with Leica, Zeke had created a 5th. Beyond that, there was even a secret, its final form, a terrifying and destructive ability, the same one he had once used to slay the divine dragon in his past life. He wondered silently how his descendants had handled his other dragon techniques over time. Perhaps they had modified them. Zeke decides to return to his physical training since there was nothing else to learn from dragon combat arts. Suddenly, Rangis hits Zeke with a weird request, asking him if he would do him the honor of training him. Rangis talks about his desire to get really strong even though it is quite tough. Surprisingly, Zeke tells him that he is up for it because he sees Rangis as someone who is teachable. Rangis is still celebrating his win when a familiar voice appears from behind, asking Zeke to train her too. The voice is none other than Leica, and even though she is shy about it, she cannot help but admit the fact that Zeke is impressive enough to have defeated her. Leica talks about just how good Zeke is, and she admits that her pride was shattered during their match. Zeke is shocked by the sudden request, and Leica adds that she also wants to become stronger, strong enough to surpass her brothers, and even Zeke himself. Her sudden request catches Zeke off guard. He takes a moment to think, leaving Leica anxiously waiting for his answer. Since Zeke didn't respond right away, Leica assumed Zeke was refusing her request. After all, he was also a successor candidate and training an enemy must feel awkward. Rangis, in that very moment, seemed to have also remembered this fact. Although Zeke was an illegitimate child, he was still the family head's son. But unexpectedly, Zeke replied calmly that he didn't mind, but his concern was about Leica's condition. From what he had seen during their match, her injuries should have taken at least a month to heal. Leica was a bit thrown off with this concern, finding it strange that he was worried about such trivial matter. She explains that she had already used a healing potion, so there was no need for him to worry. Zeke and Rangis exchanged a look, whispering to each other. Zeke wondered if the potion truly had such strong effects, and Rangis clarified that if Zeke meant the basic potion given during the entrance exam, it wouldn't have been enough to heal Leica's wounds that quickly. However, since she was the daughter of the family head, she must have used a much stronger potion. Zeke sighed in amazement, muttering that this era truly was something else. Leica admitted that without the potion, it would have taken her a month to recover, but more importantly, was Zeke willing to train her? She was aware that he also needed to train. Zeke agreed without hesitation, informing the two that he never turned down any young person who had ambition. Both Leica and Rangis were surprised by his response. Leica pointed out that he was just as young as them, and Rangis added that they were about the same age. Zeke chuckled, agreeing with them before teasingly asking if Leica was sure about wanting him as her instructor. After all, he was the one who just defeated her. Leica replied firmly that it didn't matter. She couldn't afford to be picky if she wants to become the next family head. Strength was the only thing that mattered, and she was willing to do whatever it takes. Zeke remembered their first encounter when Leica had spoken about her dream of becoming family head. He asked why she seemed so determined to become the family head. Without hesitation, Leica answered bitterly that if she fails to become the family head, she would be used for a political marriage. At best, she would probably be forced to marry one of her cousins, and in the worst case, she would end up as someone's concubine. Zeke's expression suddenly darkened, anger flickering in his eyes as he asked what she meant. Leica explained that it was natural considering how unique the Eldragon's bloodline was, especially among the 4 great houses of the family. Their source power was special and could be used in countless ways. That was why the family was obsessed with keeping their bloodline pure. Rangis shuddered as a terrifying aura radiated from Zeke. His voice turned cold and sharp as he declared that the Eldragon family had truly begun to do disgusting things. He clenched his fists and swore that he would destroy such meaningless traditions. Before the atmosphere could grow heavier, several instructors arrived, drawing everyone's attention. Leica blinked in surprise, wondering why they had come, while Zeke muttered that the timing couldn't be worse. He worried that they might have overheard what he just said. From behind them, a woman with fiery red hair appeared. One of the instructors stepped forward and announced that starting that day, they would have a new instructor. Despite her busy schedule, she had taken the time to teach them personally, and they should be grateful. As the red-haired woman approached, she reached out her hand toward Leica, asking if she was Lady Leica. Feeling a wave of danger, Leica instinctively leaped back. Zeke stepped forward protectively, while Rangis grabbed his arm in fear. The red-haired woman smiled faintly, praising Leica's sharp reaction and noted that her aura quality wasn't bad too. Zeke frowned slightly. He hadn't even sensed her presence until now. Rangis nervously asked who she was. The instructor introduced her as Lady Freya Winkick of the Black Dragon Corps. Freya gave a cheerful smile and greeted everyone, saying she was pleased to meet them all. Then she looked straight at Zeke and asked if he was Lord Zeke. Zeke confirms this, and Freya asked if he wasn't surprised by her sudden appearance. Zeke replied calmly that there was nothing particularly shocking with her sudden appearance. Freya froze for a moment as Zeke's eyes began to glow faintly. He remarked that she possessed quite an intriguing technique. Freya was quick to see why the family head had taken an interest in him. Freya's stealth technique was rather impressive. As Zeke observed her, he noticed her source power was concentrated in her lower body, following a unique flow pattern that made her footsteps completely silent. A spark of excitement lit up his eyes as he wondered what kind of martial art she used. Freya then took command of the class, confirming that she would be their new instructor. The students began whispering among themselves in disbelief. Lady Freya, the Tempest Wind, was one of the strongest warriors in the family. The other instructor confirmed that she was a 6-star practitioner under the Black Dragon Corps, the elite unit serving directly under the family head. The students were in awe, unable to understand why someone of her rank would come to teach at their academy. Freya smiled faintly and said she would indeed train them, but under one condition. They had to pass a simple test. The students gasped, but Freya assured them it was simple. They just needed to bring back a crystal like the one she was holding and survive for 1 full month inside the Poison Dragon Mountain. Rangis went pale at the name, while Zeke felt a sense of nostalgia. The Poison Dragon Mountain was home to countless poisonous creatures, where even brushing against a leaf could kill an ordinary person instantly. It was a region of pure danger. Zeke recalled how in his previous life he had used that place as his personal training ground. Still, he thought this test might be too cruel for young students. Freya continued explaining the rules. Each student would receive 1 crystal orb. If their orb broke or was lost, they would immediately be disqualified. When someone nervously asked what would happen to those disqualified, Freya bluntly replied that they would be expelled from the dragon's nest. She added that they didn't need to worry about the poison itself. If they properly used the dragon's breath-breathing technique, they would be fine. As long as they maintained their breathing and kept their orbs safe, they could survive. Leica pointed out that aside from poisonous plants, there were also monsters. Freya's eyes turned sharp as she said they would have to defeat those monsters themselves, since hunting was the only way to secure food. Without it, they wouldn't last a few days. The students were horrified. Retin muttered that it was impossible. Many doubted whether their basic combat technique, the Strike Dragon, could even hurt the creatures living there. Freya smirked and told them not to panic. They had 5 days to prepare. During that time, they could each choose a basic weapon art from the Eldragon family archives to learn. Mastering it would improve their survival chances. If they failed to learn it within 5 days, she would not take responsibility for what happened. When one student asked timidly if Freya would help them in case things got too dangerous, she chuckled darkly, saying that in the dragon's nest only the strong survived. Those who couldn't defeat a few monsters might as well sleep peacefully beside them in the bed of poison. The students trembled in fear. Rangis was on the verge of tears while Leica stayed silent in deep thought. Zeke frowned, wondering if this was still the same Eldragon family he once knew. It felt completely different from when he had been family head. Freya ended the announcement and began distributing martial arts books for every weapon type, telling them to pick whichever technique they wanted to learn. As the students crowded around, Rangis hesitated, unsure what to choose. Zeke advised him to take a spear technique since he had used a spear during the entrance exam. Rangis agreed and thanked him. Leica said she would pick a greatsword technique since she already knew the lightning greatsword's basic forms, but Zeke stopped her and suggested she try axe arts instead. When she asked why, Zeke explained that it would help cover her current weaknesses. Since it was Zeke who suggested it, she quietly agreed and trusted his words. Freya asked if everyone had chosen their books. When they confirmed, she told them to make good use of the remaining 5 days, as their survival depended entirely on mastering those techniques. If they failed, they would die pathetically in the Poison Dragon Mountain. Just as she was about to leave, Freya turned back and warned them that their seniors would be trying to steal their crystal orbs during the test. Rangis was stunned, asking what she meant. Freya explained that their senior group, 10 years older, would take the same test, but their task was to hunt down and steal the orbs from the younger batch. She added that the younger students outnumbered the seniors, and since the mountain was vast, they might get lucky and avoid confrontation. Still, the seniors would use every method to track and attack them. After saying that, Freya turned and left. Rangis looked terrified, sweating as he asked what they were supposed to do now. Not only did they have to deal with poisonous monsters, but also upperclassmen hunting them. Leica frowned, realizing that every upperclassman was at least 1 star level higher. If they ganged up on her, she wouldn't last long, and most of their classmates wouldn't survive either. Zeke agreed and advised her to form a small group of 2 or 3, since cooperation wasn't forbidden. They could help each other hunt and defend against seniors. When Rangis asked about Zeke's plan, he said he intended to go solo and enjoy the exam. Leica sighed, admitting that it sounded just like him. Before beginning their training, Zeke suggested they eat first. As they walked away, Leica glanced at Rangis and asked if he thought Zeke was a little strange sometimes. Rangis shrugged and replied that he was. 5 days later, the students gathered before the Poison Dragon Mountain, some with anticipation while others with fear. They waited patiently for the instructor, Freya, to initiate the beginning of the test. Freya stood before them with a confident smile and declared that the weather was perfect for the test to begin.